Okay. Hello, welcome. I'm very glad to be here and tell you a story about innovation at Spreadshirt. Nowadays, we have a lot of talk about innovation going on. You can hardly read one issue of the Harvard Business Review, for example, where innovation is not a main topic. A lot of high-flying ambitions about innovation. What I want to tell you is a story that is a little bit more down to earth. It's a rather humble story of Spreadshirt's journey towards becoming a learning organization. My story comes in 5 chapters, and every chapter is framed by a provocative statement, and I hope that these statements help us in our discussion afterwards. The clicker. Turn it on. Okay, some background information. Spreadshirt was founded in 2001 with just 50,000 euros seed capital, and it was the brainchild, or is the brainchild, of Lukasz Gadowski, back then a student at Leipzig Management School. And his idea was to allow everybody in an easy and frictionless way to sell t-shirts online, to have a shop and sell your t-shirts there. This was an innovative, good idea back then, and it grew into an 85 million euro business. So Spreadshirt nowadays is the biggest print-on-demand company for apparel in Europe, and also was or is quite so successful in the US. Every week, this was astonishing for me when I started at Spreadshirt just a year ago. Every week there are 200,000 new designs uploaded to the platform. So designs for your t-shirt, for your tote bags, whatever. And this all is handled by roughly 500 employees globally, so located in Germany, in the US, and some other offices worldwide. The new history of innovation, what I want to talk about, started in 2012 when the CEO, Chris Rook, realized that Spreadshirt had to change. A transformation was needed because the culture was very much inwards focused. It was very much technology focused, and the CEO realized that the company needed to break free from this view and open up to its customers, so become more customer-centric. Therefore, they brought in new talents, they installed new methods, agile, for example, agile methodologies, and used various frameworks to get better at this stuff. But this was only the first step. Later on in the journey, they realized that to not allow the competition to steal their business, they had to produce more big ideas, more innovative ideas. Spreadshirt was an innovator at the beginning, but it had kind of lost a little bit of its momentum. So they brought in new people. I joined the company at the beginning of 2015, and my main responsibility is to improve design and design thinking, the design mindset in the whole company. That's one part of it. And the other part is to concentrate on the innovation capabilities of Spreadshirt. So, chapter 1, how to start, how to do that. When you look at the studies and literature, you realize that if we are very honest to ourselves, very often innovation initiatives already die at the beginning because it's very, very hard to get started. Innovation is part of your culture, of course, and therefore it is very tough to make it visible, to get a tangible grip on innovation. And so what I did first was a thorough analysis, but more like getting to know the culture, getting to know the people, and working with them. And what this analysis revealed, that Spreadshirt was very good at incremental improvements. Yeah? They were very good at improving their platform, adding feature by feature, stuff like that. But there was almost no radical thinking there, no radical or disruptive ideas floating around. They also had no innovation strategy. So they had a corporate strategy, but there was innovation didn't fit to that. It was not linked to that. And I can vividly remember a situation where I presented a pie chart to the top management that showed 90% of everything that you're doing is going into incremental improvements, and roughly 10% is about maybe new things, coming up with new ideas, new business models, stuff like that. But this picture was not the real problem. The real problem that Spreadshirt had was that apart from parts of the top management, nobody saw a problem in this situation because the company was doing good, numbers were growing, and the employees, if you ask them, were very happy with their jobs and with what they're doing at Spreadshirt, right? So there was no sense of urgency to change anything. So for Spreadshirt, the situation was like being in a paradise, and who wants to stretch himself for innovation or for innovative things if you can have the low-hanging fruits just flying into your mouth, right? So Spreadshirt in this situation was at the risk of being a victim of its own success. And I think there are two factors that were mainly responsible for that. First of all, convenience. The company was and is successful, and it was very convenient to just move on, just to continue on the rail that you're on and not change anything. And the other thing was that Spreadshirt had grown out from a startup into a more mature corporation, and in this way it got more and more risk averse. It forgot how to take risks and how important taking risks is. This led, from my perspective, to a very classic problem for Spreadshirt. They had in the company, generally speaking, no sense of urgency to change anything. And this had to be tackled first. I think it's quite natural to not feel that because, and I think that's linked to us being in our comfort zone. We as persons, we like to stay in our comfort zone. This is the safe place. This is the place where we feel good and comfortable. And as all systems, not only for persons, but also for companies, you like to stay in your comfort zone. You like to control things. You like to not be disrupted or in any way irritated by outside information. So Spreadshirt, in a way, had to kick itself out of paradise. That is maybe the central piece of that. And there are at least two ways to do that, to kick yourself out of paradise. You can go the way of fear. You can say, okay, if we want to create this kind of urgency, let's tell people, look, there is this competitor. There are these startups. They are coming. They are eating our business. And you better hurry up. You better be more innovative if you don't want to lose your jobs. Yeah? And John Kotter, many of you know him, made this a very, very interesting or intrigue theme in management circles, the way of fear. But there is also, of course, a way of hope. Yeah? Way where you say, look, if we are getting better at what we are doing, we as persons, we are intrinsically motivated at fulfilling our potential. And we can use that and say, look, we can be curious about the future that lies ahead of us, not only for Spreadshirt, but also for every person working for this company. And this hopeful way was the way we choose for Spreadshirt. So we had to break out of the familiar at Spreadshirt. We had to kick ourselves out of paradise. How to do that? What would be the right approach for Spreadshirt to tackle with these problems? We were very clear about the requirements for this job. It had to be participatory, meaning that everybody in the company is invited to join us and to be part of that. It has to be strength-based, meaning that we want to use the potential of everybody who is already there. We want to build upon that. And it had to be customer-centric. The first step, of course, was building a team. We called this team Innovation Guild, giving the sense that in a guild, people come together with a common understanding or at least a common desire to do something. And we made this call for participation, an open call in the whole company. And to the first meetings, we not only had the usual suspects, so designers and product managers, but also people from HR and people from development. They participated, and we had over 30 participants in our first meeting, which is for a company of that size a good start. I moderated the weekly guild meetings, but only to give it a basic structure, not too much, but just some facilitation for the thing to start. But it was very important for us that all these discussions, all these meetings were open-ended and open-minded, meaning that people come with their own intentions, their own ideas about innovation, and had a room now for the first time to talk about that. And we used that a lot, right? We really provided a space for discussing innovation. We used common definitions of innovation to talk about those things. And this not only helped us as a team understanding innovation in a better way, it also, and I think that's even more important, it helped people to bond together, to come together, and really grew as a team. Yeah. As a next step, we created a central design process for Spreadshirt, an innovation process, if you want, and some methods and a framework for using that. And what was interesting to see was that based on the previous discussions, because we gave that so much time, it was very easy to roll that design process out in the company globally. So we've done that in 3 months, and every person in the guild could act as an advocate and facilitator for the design process, and help other people in their teams understand what this human-centered design process that we used is all about. With this, we had a foundation for innovation at Spreadshirt. We created awareness for innovation. We also created some kind of understanding of innovation, and we were very, very excited to move forward. What are the learnings? Very shortly. I think it's paramount that we are aware of the fact that all of us, if we work about innovation, we bring our own beliefs, we bring our own opinions, our own mindsets to this job, right? First, it's just an assignment, or in this case, it was a voluntary initiative, but we are in there, right? And so I think it's important to not only have interdisciplinary teams, that's what you hear everywhere, of course, form an interdisciplinary team to have innovative ideas created, but you also have to respect the perspective of every person who is there. And of course, this takes time, and of course, it's not always that easy to tolerate all these different opinions. But if we are aware of the fact that we need this kind of variety to create good ideas, of course, the clash of ideas that can create new ideas, I think it's worth the time to respect this. You could say we need aligned variety instead of streamlining. And of course, these regular guild meetings made a team out of individuals. It really brought the people together, and it helped us to realize that each and every background is a strength that we can use in our work on innovation at Spreadshirt. Okay, now you could say, so far so good. Sounds like a success story, great. Job well done, except that you all know the structure of a classic story. I would tell you a very boring story if we just continue with successes. There are a lot of failures, a lot of mistakes that we made. So the reality hit us really strongly in the face, and I also want to talk about that. To gather as many ideas about and opinions about innovation as possible in the whole company, we did a lot of interviews, over 40 interviews, and then followed by 7 co-creation workshops company-wide. And we had in this way, we gathered more than 200 aspects about innovation. I call it aspects because it was not only, or the fascinating fact was that only 1/3 of that, roughly, was about concrete innovation ideas. So what could Spreadshirt do next, for example, coming up with a new printing technology, right? And the rest of that, so 2/3 of that, was more about hindrances and problems that Spreadshirt has with innovation. Why can I not be innovative at this company? And we really asked for this stuff. And people identified problems with strategy, with management, with communication, stuff like that. That was very, very interesting and very helpful for our for the proceedings. But we had 60 concrete innovation ideas, and the team that I was working with was mostly interested in developing these ideas. So we built a list of criteria that should help us to identify the concrete ideas that we want to work on, and we also had a framework for that. But given all this help, the team had a really hard time to decide or to choose on which of these topics to work. Yeah? And this was very interesting. The team came to the conclusion that they, in this whole group, we're speaking of 20 people, a lot of potential, a lot of know-how, these 20 people don't have enough know-how to choose the right innovation idea to work on. So they decided, and we thought at this point in time it was a good idea, we decided, I have to say that, we decided to just make a list of recommendations for the top management and present them this list and then let them choose which topics we want to work on. Sounded like a good idea. But in hindsight, I can say that at this point, we already saw one of the deep problems in the culture at Spreadshirt, that people think they are not able to make hard and tough choices. Yeah? So we're not a kind of reluctance to make tough decisions. And so we didn't decide anything. We didn't come up with this list, not really. We were in a situation of uncertainty, and directly in this situation, reality hit us very, very hard. We were approaching Christmas season. That's hot season for Spreadshirt. Most of the revenue is happening there. Everybody had a lot of things to do. Top management, including myself, were going into a strategy phase where we were creating the new 3-year strategy for Spreadshirt, so reduced time for innovation again. And last but not least, my colleague, the director of product and brand, with whom I built the guild and all this thinking behind it, suddenly, all of a sudden, left the company. So this was quite messy. We were massively hampered by this situation, and not surprisingly, the motivation in the guild declined. We had not chosen any topics despite several attempts to do so, and we got stuck with the situation. And it also, and that's quite funny, it revealed a downside of the interviews that I told you about, where we asked about all these things around innovation, so basically about the culture at Spreadshirt. Now, people who saw the results from these interviews also were asking themselves, oh, when there are so many barriers to innovation at this company, is it worth spending my time on that? Should I really fight for innovation? Or should I just move away? Yeah, do something else, do something productive. And that was a really, really big problem. So we hit rock bottom, you could say. It felt like a very, very big failure, and it was totally unclear if and how we could continue this work. We were on the verge of giving up. But as always, we can learn a lot from those things. So one is obvious. What we didn't have was a good success at the right time. We didn't have any beacon project that we could present not only the other people in the company, but also to ourselves. Okay? But it also was a very hard lesson for myself. I totally underestimated in this situation how important for an outcome-driven company like Spreadshirt it is to have tangible outcomes. So for me, it was it was good progress that we created a structure, that we created a process, that we created concepts and a common thinking about innovation, but all of that in a certain way didn't matter in this outcome-focused company. I thought the company had to change into a more process-oriented company, but I was just I was preaching instead of helping, and that was a problem. In doing so, I also stopped following our strength-based way. To be very honest, we said at the beginning we want to be resource-oriented. We want to work with what the people already have, what the people can do. These people could do an innovative project. They could have produced something like that if we had made the decision, but we didn't come to that point. So I stood too long on the meta level and not going into the pragmatics of this job. Okay. So at Spreadshirt, we were very close to an innovation breakdown, so to say. What comes next? How to continue in such a situation, if there is any continuation. In the next meeting, next guild meeting, we had just 5 people, I think it was 5 or 6 people attending this meeting. And it was very frustrating to be there. And I rather spontaneously decided to directly ask the people, the attendees, where does this go? What is the future of innovation, and what is the future of this group where we are in right now? And we talked about, or we shared our frustrations. We told each other about our lack of motivation, declining motivation, and our hopes that firstly brought us to the Innovation Guild and that hadn't fulfilled. So the disappointment was clearly felt from everybody, but what was intriguing was that between all these sentences and between all this conversation, there was always some little spark of pride. Yeah, people were talking about the work that they already have done for innovation and the small progress that they achieved. And I think it was this hope that helped us to regain enough confidence to talk about our options. And there were 3 of them. So 3 options. Option number 1, stop innovation work. Just stop it. Option 2, concentrate on transferring innovation know-how into our running teams. And option 3 would be build something like an innovation lab or a design or a think tank within the company. Yeah? These were the 3 options that we came up with. And from my perspective, and in hindsight, I can say this was the turning point for us in the company talking about innovation. And I don't mean it's strictly about these options. It's more like this sharing our feelings and being very, very open about the situation. And in our next meetings, we could break free from our paralysis. We had 3 options. Everybody could choose. All of a sudden, a lot of people returned to the meeting. It was roughly more than 20 people. They heard that things are moving again, and they came back again. And they could choose from these 3 options. Roughly 1/3 of the people just decided to stop doing innovation. They said, look, I've learned enough, and I want to continue my work and bring that into my work. And the other 2/3 roughly distributed between the 2 options that we had. So in this way, a completely new phase of innovation had started at Spreadshirt. A lot of learnings from this crisis. The biggest insight maybe is that we realized for the first time for ourselves, not everybody, but many people that shared this with me, that innovation is always about ourselves at the core, because it is our opinions, it's our feelings, it's our will for change that is at stake here, right? And so people took it much more personally than from the beginning. Remember, first it was a voluntary project. You could just come in if you liked, but the people that were in this group had changed. Some of them had changed. They could now take matters in their own hands, and they didn't want to give up. They realized that it became personally important. You could say in a way that engaging ourselves in this innovation work showed us that the opportunity to change is very, very important and very near and dear to our heart. And this was definitely, you could definitely see in this situation. Innovation competence starts with individual competence, you could also say. What was also great that the circulation of know-how that we did before helped us to share the responsibility. Now I could also took a step back and other people jumped in. One of the participants, for example, decided to lead this innovation lab, and he recruited a lot of new people from all over the company to be there as well. Another person compiled all the methods and the thinking that we've done in the guild to bring it into the teams in a more easy way. Just another person went through all the interviews again and identified some of the innovation ideas that could, with a little twist, could be integrated in our daily work, which was also great. And just another person, to mention a last example, was one person joining a new business unit at Spreadshirt and helping them designing and testing their new business model. This was also one of the results. So with all of this, a very long but especially turbulent journey lies behind us. What lies ahead of Spreadshirt? Just very briefly. Currently, I can say innovation at Spreadshirt is in full swing. The CEO is given a new strategy, is giving a lot of new impulses to this group. And I think he also waited some months to see if this is really going to be a thing or not. And now he sees we are still there. We're working on these things. We have two teams working in different ways on innovation. We have a foundation established for innovation. The uncertainties that I mentioned didn't just disappear, but there are others now. And I'm very, very positive that we can deal with them in a better way. Innovation remains a challenge, of course, because you always have to work on holding your current level and putting in more work if you want to gain another level. And I think this is also a good time to look at the future or into the future with a little bit more serenity, a little bit more relaxed, because if we face it from one perspective, uncertainties in our lives are just building blocks for innovation, right? We need this innovation, this uncertainty, and why then not smile at it? Okay, short conclusion. I think what the experience that I just shared with you shows that at the core of innovation lies the ability to learn, right? And companies, I think, have to learn how to learn faster and better, in better ways. In this way, if we're doing that, we can increase the scope of our activities, we can increase our impact, we can create new possibilities, not only for the companies we're working for, but also for ourselves. We can learn how to deal with the change in the world in a more active way, not just passively or not being at the mercy of change. And also we can maybe deal with the uncertainties in our lives with a little bit more of serenity and a little bit more relaxed. Thank you very much.